Hi, Charlie here, and this is a recap of everything we looked at in week 1, critical listening, term 2. Okay, so for anybody who missed the lesson or anybody who didn't get anything, watch this video and you'll be back up to scratch with where we are, ready for the next week's lesson. So in week 1, we looked at the musical alphabet. We looked at how to plot the musical alphabet on both the piano or the keyboard layout and on the guitar fretboard. Once we did that, we looked at those notes and we looked at a series of intervals and created a major scale. And from the major scale, we looked at harmonizing the major scale, which gave us a sequence of chords which worked really well together for creating music, writing music, and also for transcribing music. So a couple of really important things. In this first video lesson, we're going to be looking at the musical alphabet and how to plot that on both the piano and on the guitar. Now, I should just say at this point, anybody who's sitting there thinking, oh, this doesn't apply to me, I don't play the piano, I don't play the guitar, it does. Drummers, singers, anyone who plays an instrument that isn't a piano or a guitar, it's essential, if you don't know already, to learn the notes and the layout of the piano keyboard. It's very important to also have an understanding of the guitar, but certainly the piano keyboard is essential. If you're a guitarist, you must understand the notes on the guitar layout and of the fretboard. That's an essential piece of information that we need to learn, and it's not going to happen overnight, but you'll get there. Okay, so let's start with the piano and let's look at the musical alphabet and plot that on the piano. So the musical alphabet has 7 notes in it, and that's A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. That's it, A to G. We don't have H, I, J, doesn't exist, it's just A to G. If we play the notes A to G, when we get to G, the next note along would be back to the note A, 1 octave higher than the note we started on. And then we'd again play A to G, and we'd go to the next octave and the next octave, and we can go lower or higher. So it just cycles around these 7 notes going in higher and lower in octaves. Let's take a look at the piano keyboard, and I'm going to bring the piano up here. I've got mine in front of me. And let's look at where do we find these notes on the piano. So first of all, I want to just bring your attention to the fact that we have 3 black notes, 2 black notes, 3 black notes, 2 black notes. Wherever there is 2 black notes, the white note that sits between them is the note D. When I was in school, I was always taught D in the doghouse. However you want to remember it, as long as you remember that the 2 black notes sit over the note D. So the white notes represent our whole notes, and the black notes represent our sharps and flats. So taking a look at just the white notes to start with, we know where the note D is, and we can see that in any octave. If we look at the note that falls just before it, the white note, sorry, that falls just before the note D, that's the note C. And I'm playing the note C, which happens to fall pretty much in the middle of my piano. And that's known as middle C. So if you look at your piano and you find a note C, if you find a note C which roughly sits in the middle of the piano, that's known as middle C. On a musical stave, that sits just between the treble clef and the bass clef, so it sits in the middle. It's the C below the stave on the treble clef, and it's the C just above the stave on the bass clef, so middle C. Now we know that the white notes represent our whole notes, so if we just follow those notes up from the white note C all the way until we get to C 1 octave higher, we're just going to be playing all the whole notes. So let's do that. So we've got C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. Lovely, so that's really straightforward. Okay, now let's take a look at the black notes. Now these are our sharp and flat notes. Now there's always a bit of confusion here, because if we take, for example, the note C sharp, which is the black note just above and to the right of the note C, that is C sharp or D flat, 2 notes which share the same pitch, and that's an area for confusion, especially when we're learning this stuff. They're known as enharmonic notes, 2 notes which share the same pitch, enharmonic notes. When would we use one and not the other? Well, it all depends on what key we're in, and we'll look a little bit more about that when we do the major scale shortly. But for now, let's take a look at the notes on the black notes. So we have C sharp and D flat, we have D sharp and E flat, F sharp and G flat, G sharp and A flat, and A sharp or B flat. And again, that repeats itself, going higher in octaves or lower in octaves. So with that in mind, we should now have a pretty clear layout of the piano. And it's really easy to memorize that, and because we have this differentiation between the white whole notes and the black sharp and flat notes, it's a really clear visual layout. I'm going to play a chromatic scale starting from the note C for 1 octave, just so that we can play all the notes in order. And what I mean by a chromatic scale, we're just playing every note, and we're playing in semitone intervals, a semitone being from one key to the next available along, to the next along, to the next along. So we're playing every single note all the way up from C through to C 1 octave higher, just so we can see all of those notes. So we've got C, C sharp or D flat, D, D sharp or E flat, E, F sharp or G flat, G, G sharp or A flat, A sharp or B flat, B, and C. Okay, and again, it repeats in all the different octaves, higher or lower. Now, I just want to bring your attention to 2 points, and that is that there are 2 white notes in 2 different places where there is no black note in between them, and that's B and C, and E and F. I want you to just make a visual reference of that for now, and that'll become more obvious as to why I've mentioned that when we look at the major scale and we follow this formula of tones and semitones to create the major scale. But for now, B and C and E and F, no black note in between them, and that also is part of the reason why we have this pattern of 3 black notes, 2 black notes, 3 black notes, 2 black notes. Okay, let's take that information and let's convert it onto the guitar. Now, first thing I should say is that the guitar is the same principle. It follows the same chromatic order of notes. We use the same 7 notes, nothing changes, but we have this overlap in the notes along the strings due to the way that the notes is tuned, each string is tuned. And we don't have the black and the white to differentiate between whole notes and sharp or flat notes. We do have these dots along the frets which give us a bit of a helpful reminder as to where certain notes sit. But first of all, we're going to take a look at the open strings. So when we tune our guitar to standard tuning, E standard, we have the following notes. The low 6th string is the note E. The 5th string is A. The 4th string is D. The 3rd string is G. The 2nd string is B. And the 1st string is E again. Okay, so when you've got your guitar in tune, they're the notes that we tune the strings to. And it's important to remember that this is the 6th string, the low E string, and this is the 1st string, the high E string. Often confused with beginners, and it's really important to make a note of that and remember that, because you're only going to cause confusion later on if you get these run the wrong way. There's a little rhyme to help you remember that. Even a dog gets breakfast early. Something that I was taught and something which has stayed with me all these years, but nonetheless a nice simple way of remembering the notes that we tune the strings to. Okay, let's look at a chromatic pattern along the low E string. And what I'm going to do is, you'll see the guitar fretboard below me, and as I play these notes, I'm going to colour code them to coincide with the notes on the piano. So where we have this 3 black note, 2 black note, 3 black note, 2 black note pattern on the piano, you'll see the same thing on the diagrams. So on the low E string we have low E, then we have the note F, and there's our 2 white notes which don't have a black note between them. F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C. Again, the 2 white notes which don't have a black note between them. C sharp, D, D sharp, and E. Now we've ended up at the 12th fret, and that's significant, and it's often represented with 2 dots. And it's significant because the 12th fret is 1 octave higher than the open E string, than the open E string we started on, or it's 1 octave higher than all of the open strings. So the notes on this 12th fret are again E, A, D, G, B, and E. So all 1 octave higher than the open strings. Okay, so we've looked at the notes across this low E string, and then we would simply do the same thing for every single string. Now bearing in mind that the low 6th string, and the 1st string are both tuned to E, we only have 5 strings to memorise, because we kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone there. So again, we would do the same thing on the A string, and we would start with the open A sharp, B, C, again there's the 2 white notes, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, 2 white notes, F sharp, G, G sharp, and A, 1 octave higher on the 12th fret, the same note we started with. And we do that for every single string. Now this isn't going to happen overnight. You're not going to remember these notes overnight. It's going to take you sometimes months, if not years, before you fully memorise all of these notes. There's a few things we can do to really help us get to grips with this. The first thing is, I want you to just practice 1 string at a time. So let's start with our low E string, the 6th string. And let's play these notes up and down as we did, and as we play them, we say them out loud or we say them in our head. And as we're playing along there, I want you to just make a note of which notes sit on what dots. So for example, I know, because I've been playing the guitar for so long, that on the low E string, the 3rd fret, which is always represented by the first dot on the fretboard, is the note G. And then the 2nd dot is the note A. And obviously the 2 dots on the 12th fret is E, and so on. And so these dots are here for no other reason than to just help us and just guide us as visual references as to where these notes sit. Okay, the other thing you can do to really help you with this is spend time just doing one string at a time, but also to take pen and paper and draw out a fretboard diagram. Actually physically draw one out yourself and plot these notes on it, on every single string. So at the end of that, not only do you have this big diagram which you can stick on your wall and certainly keep somewhere wherever you're practicing. So when you're practicing, you have that diagram to hand, but it's also engaging a different part of your brain and really making you think about this, which is one of the best ways I find to learn this sort of thing. Okay, so that's the notes on the piano and the notes on the guitar fretboards. Let's move on to the next lesson, which is going to be covering the major scale.